Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla. I make videos about reading and fitness and all the things I do to take care of myself, all while encouraging you to do the same. Today's video is going to be what I read in October. I didn't think I had any room to make this video, but then I realized that I read 13 books in October, which I don't even know when and or how that happened, but I'm really happy about it. So I wanted to share. I have a good mix of literary fiction and I think one nonfiction, a couple romance, a couple thrillers because it was October, spooky season. There was a couple really good ones and then a couple that were so horrible I would not recommend them to my worst enemy. So that being said, let's start with the first book that I read in October, which was All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. I will be the first to admit I am not the biggest Colleen stan. I mean, I think her books are popular for a reason and they are enjoyable, but I haven't read any that have knocked me off my feet, even the ones that are, you know, really popular. This one, All Your Perfects, I really enjoyed. First of all, there's like a big trigger warning. The whole book is discussing infertility. It is about Quinn and Graham. I love the name Graham, and you're following multiple timelines. So you're seeing them now when they've been married for years and years and their relationship is crumbling. And then you're also seeing them when they met, they had kind of a tumultuous meeting and how that turned into this relationship that developed over time. And all the while you're seeing the infertility like weave in and out of their life. It was really tragic, but I felt like the characters were so likable, I guess. It made me, you know, want to continue going down the Colleen road eventually. I'm not writing her off. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And then things went quite quickly downhill. I read / listened to The Paris Apartment, and I think that was the problem. Had I read the book, I think I would have given it a higher score, or I at least would have enjoyed it more. As an audiobook, it was painful. I don't know how I did not DNF this book. Follows, I believe her name is Jess. She loses her job and she goes to Paris to meet up with her brother Ben, and they have kind of a challenging relationship. They're a bit estranged. They had a difficult childhood. And she gets there and Ben is missing, and she's like, oh, what the heck? He wouldn't have just, you know, told me to come and then not have been here. So she's immediately, you know, investigating, trying to figure out where he is, what happened to him, who's involved. So you're getting Jess's perspective, but you're also getting Ben's like flashback perspective from before he went missing, and you're getting the perspectives of all the other people that live in the building. There's men and women, and I think that in itself is not a bad thing. I enjoyed that in audiobook form for Daisy Jones and the Six. For an audiobook, whoever is reading makes or breaks it, and I just could not follow along or get on board with whoever the voice actors were for this book. I just was totally lost. Like, I kept zoning out, and then I would come back and something dramatic or huge would have happened, and I was like, do I care that much? Do I want to rewind and see what the twist was? It took me forever to get through this book because I just had to keep going back and figuring out where I left off, but I was never paying attention, so I couldn't like pick up on any scenes. I don't know. I gave it a 2 out of 5, and I feel bad because it's a pretty popular book, so I feel like had I read it, it would have been higher, but I just cannot. The audiobook was no bueno. Then we're back to romance. Twisted Love, a brother's best friend romance. I think that's the name. It's definitely Twisted Love. I kind of took liberties on that second part. This book was steamy. I mean, it was probably the most detailed and explicit romance that I've read. That being said, the characters were wholly unbelievable. Frustrating to read about. The story lacked any depth whatsoever, and so the book is about Ava and Alex. Ava's brother is leaving town and he asks his best friend Alex to watch over her because, like, God forbid a grown woman be able to watch over herself while her older brother is out of town. So Alex is the friend, and he's like 20-something CEO of this massive multi-billion-dollar company, super, super, super sexy, Russian, and so, so, so grumpy. Yeah, so Ava wants to soften him up, and that trope in itself is fine. And you know, like, they're gonna end up together, but it's like, how do we get from point A to point B? That is meant to be the book, right? And this book just kind of skips that. Ava like hates him one day, and then the next day she makes a plan to soften him up, and then the third day they're like madly in love with each other, and there's just so little development of that story. You're just like hanging on by the strings of the steaminess. The characters themselves, the story is just so dramatic. Like, they both had these horrible, horrible, horrible pasts full of like murder and betrayal and tragedy, and just kind of, it's too much. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Like, really, for those steamy scenes, we're going like 3 or 4 out of 5, but the rest of the book just could not make up for it. I'm really sorry. I wanted it to. And it also had, like, you know, one of those tragic covers that just embarrasses any romance reader. And then the magic happened. I don't own books. I cannot afford that lifestyle. I don't have room in my house, but if I was gonna buy a book, it would be Emily Henry's books. Like I said in my last video about books that made me love reading again, Emily Henry's writing style is just top notch. I absolutely love it. And Book Lovers was no different. It's almost like a parody of romance. I feel like she is definitely kind of like making fun of the genre throughout the book. I like that, and I thought it was so self-aware and so witty and so funny. Book Lovers, if you somehow haven't read it yet, is about Nora. She is like a city girl, New Yorker, hardworking, career-driven woman in New York City. She is a book agent, and she meets up with this guy, Charlie, to discuss this book and getting him on board as the editor. And it doesn't really go well, and Charlie comes back later. All of her boyfriends keep going on these trips to like the middle of nowhere, and they meet these blonde haired, blue eyed, corn fed girls, and they ditch Nora to go and have this like fairy tale book romance life. And so she's kind of making fun of herself as the anti romance book woman. You know, I think anyone who reads romance knows that every female character is like little and petite and cute and easy to toss around, and it's always such a storyline, like how little she is compared to this big burly man who always has a hot muscular body. And Nora was, I mean, she was not like, of course she was like thin and beautiful, but they made her tall, which I really appreciated as a fellow tall woman myself. Why can someone who is tall not get a love story? I mean, it really bothers me actually. If I think about all these authors, there's no way they look like the women they're writing about. So why does every book woman have to look the same? Like, can't we dream up something more creative? And so, you know, Nora's character as a whole was used as a tool to like poke fun at the romance genre, and it was so clever. And her and Charlie's story, oh, did I say what it's about? Nora's sister, who's like much more family oriented, asks her to go on a trip to this little town that was featured in one of the books that Nora is an agent for. Am I confusing this? They go on a trip, a sister trip, to hang out. They have a little bucket list. It's very, very cute. And then she meets up with Charlie, and that romance ensues. And it was just so good. I would read it again. I hope it gets turned into a movie. Then we did another thriller, House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. And I've read a couple Riley Sager books, and I've enjoyed a couple of them. I feel like they're always sort of total did not see that twist coming, and this one I also did not see the twist coming, although I thought I did a few times and was quite proud of myself, but nope. When it actually came, I was sad and I wished it would go away. Yeah, so this is one of those stories like lonely woman watching her neighbors through binoculars see something she shouldn't have. When I knew that, I thought, how are they going to make this interesting? This story has been done so many times, and what he went with made me wish that we just found a total different concept. So it's about Casey. She is a former actress. Her husband recently passed away and she's deeply struggling with that. So she goes to her family's lake house to like get away from paparazzi and to recover, and she's drinking a lot and watching all her neighbors through binoculars. One of her neighbors is this model Catherine and her husband Tom, and they live in this like all glass monstrosity. Casey watches them and she sees something happen, and so of course she starts her own investigation, looping in people from around the lake trying to figure out what happened. There were definitely twists and turns, and there were a lot of fun plot twists where you could tell the author was kind of playing with you and trying to fool you and pointing out that you weren't reading closely enough, which I like. I like when it's so obvious and you have to go back into the book once you realize the twist and you're like, how did I not pick up on that? Then there's another twist, and that twist should have never happened. We all have like different things that scare us. What Riley Sager went with in this book was not something I enjoyed, and I found it to be kind of almost like a cop-out. It just felt so out of left field. Book Lovers was a 5 out of 5. House Across the Lake was a 3 out of 5. It wasn't like horrible. I would still suggest it to people who like thrillers. I just personally didn't enjoy it that much. Next was Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. I don't know how to say her name. This was the nonfiction. So she is a therapist in Los Angeles. I was worried about the book because I thought it was going to be very like self-help, and I personally don't like self-help books. I find them to be patronizing. This was not that. So basically you meet Lori. I don't think this is a spoiler. It's kind of like the premise of the book. She, counsels people every day through the hardest parts of their lives, and then something happens to her. Her boyfriend breaks up with her and she is unable to cope with it. She, even though she does this for a living, when it comes to her own life, she's unable to put those skills into practice. And so she goes into therapy herself. So you're seeing her and how she acts in therapy, even though she knows all the tricks, she knows all the tools. It isn't clicking. She's like constantly comparing herself to her own patients, and so that is really entertaining and insightful. But then also she's sharing stories from her own patients. There's this guy who's having marriage problems and he's like an a-hole. There's a older woman who plans to end her life unless things get better by her next birthday. There's a younger woman who's dying of cancer. There's this girl who is really self-destructive and keeps going back to guys who are bad for her, and she's kind of using all these people's stories to show what it means to be a therapist and different tools we can all use to kind of get through our own lives while also being vulnerable and sharing her own stories. I thought it was amazing. I give it 5 out of 5. I was totally not expecting to like it, and it really surprised me in a positive way. I would recommend that one to anyone. Then we have my girl Jody. Wish You Were Here by Jodi Picoult. I loved her books in high school, and so I was scared to read this because I thought, if I loved her in high school, surely I will not love her now. I was wrong. This book was quite good. I don't know how it got on my TBR, but there it was, and my TBR is kind of getting a bit overwhelming, so I'm just starting from the top and working my way down at this point. So it's about a woman, Diana, and her boyfriend have a trip to the Galapagos planned. Her boyfriend is a frontline worker, and then COVID strikes. So he tells her, I am stuck here. I'm going to be in the hospital nonstop, so you might as well just go on this trip. And this is like before quarantine. Regardless if you had COVID or if your loved one did or if you know someone who passed away from COVID, it's a very real thing that all of us collectively went through in our lifetimes, and I think it's going to be years before we fully understand the effect, the isolation, the quarantine, the death toll, the sickness itself, like the effect that had on us as individuals. While I'm not sure everyone would be ready to read a piece of fiction that talks a lot about COVID, I I liked it. She goes on the trip, and then as soon as she gets there, the island goes into lockdown and she's stuck in the Galapagos. So you're kind of seeing her like transition from being this stupid tourist who went to, an island during a pandemic and got herself stuck there, to her like building her own life there. And you're seeing her, and you're seeing how she builds relationships with people who live on the island, and you're seeing how her relationship with her boyfriend struggles because of what he's going through as a frontline worker and what she's going through being so far away from him in a pandemic and story. And then there is this like it came out of nowhere. There's like this twist that I could not have even fathomed happening. I felt like throwing the book at the wall. I was so mad, but it was also such a freaking smart idea. And I need to know if any of you have read this. I haven't heard anyone talk about it, but it was just like, are you kidding me? And I could not put the book down. Seriously, like I needed to know what happened. And the twist was only like halfway through the book, so I still had so much to get through. I gave it 5 out of 5. I really liked that book. And then after that 5 out of 5, the next one was horrible. Absolutely horrible. 1 out of 5 stars. This is where it ends. Huge trigger warning. This is a book about school shootings. That is not a topic for everyone. I think actually not many people would find that to be worth reading. I personally have read a couple books on school shootings before. I mean, The Hour I First Believed, one of my, if not my favorite book of all time. I've read memoirs from family members and victims. And I have read actually 19 Minutes by my girl Jody. Pick hold. Anyway, so there are like really good books about this topic that shed light on how complex of an issue it is. This book did not do that. This book was trash. This book did such a disservice and made a mockery of like people who have lived through school shootings and just the topic at large. Everything was so black and white. All the characters were completely one-dimensional. This is the bad guy. These are the good guys. And there's nothing in between that. And you're coming at it from multiple points of view. You have the shooter's point of view, you have his sister, you have another girl and her brother, you have the track team, which is outside the school, and then you have minute by minute updates of what every single person is going through during this ordeal. I feel like it really just focuses so much on the violence, and it doesn't even tiptoe into the direction of like the psychology or the trauma or the aftermath of this kind of. It was so poorly done. I don't even know. I discovered it because it was on the recommended list in the Libby app, and I don't know who makes that list, but I need to speak with them about that recommendation. A couple more. Then we went back to a thriller. We read Rock, Paper, Scissors. I don't know why I keep saying we. I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, and I was so excited for this because Sarah Crowley loves Alice Feeney, and I really agree with most of her book recommendations. This one was okay. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and I wish I could tell you why. I really can't pinpoint what I didn't like about it. Anyway, let me tell you, it's about Amelia and Adam. They are married. They've been married for quite some time, and they go on a trip to like rural Scotland, no neighbors, snowstorm, the whole shebang. And they're staying in like a converted church. And as soon as they get there, scary stuff starts happening. You don't know, like, is he trying to kill her? Is she trying to kill him? Is somebody else trying to kill them? Did they hire someone to kill each other? It's so confusing. You do not know what's happening, but you know something bad and creepy is going on. Meanwhile, while you're like following them as they're staying in this church, you're also getting flashbacks to the letters that the wife wrote to her husband throughout their marriage, and you kind of see the deterioration of the marriage. I just didn't care about the characters really, and the plot twist was creative enough, but I was just so uninvested. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was a decent book. I just don't feel inclined to keep reading Alice Feeney, which I'm sorry, Sarah Crowley, I wish I did. Then we went back to Jody, and this one was not as good as This Is Where I Leave You. This one was called Leaving Time. It's about a girl named Jenna, and her mom went missing when she was a baby, and so she's trying to find her mom. She's convinced her mom is still alive, so she's working with like a psychic and a retired detective to try and locate her mom. Getting that storyline, but you're also getting flashbacks to her mom as an elephant researcher, and she worked at a sanctuary, and that is kind of where the disappearance happened. So you're kind of leading up to that moment, and you're getting all these chapters about like elephant psychology and elephant emotions and elephant relationships. And kind of sounds weird, but I promise it all intertwines, because a lot of her mom's focus when she was still around was to study the mourning and the relationships and the dynamics between elephant families. And so they're kind of relating that to Jenna's relationship with her mother. It's clever. It bummed me out, but I think it was a decent twist. It's just not how I would have liked to see the book end. That was a good one. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. It wasn't Jody's best work. It had its pros. Then we had 2 really good romances back to back. We had To Deal with the Devil, and we had The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, and then there's a third one that I'm planning to read this month, and I'm so excited for it. They are just easy to read romances. The sultry scenes are sultry. The only bad thing, honestly, is the covers, because like nobody wants to walk into Barnes and Noble or check out this book from the library. You know, I got it as an ebook, and that's how it needs to stay. The first book is about Talia, and her friend is a personal assistant for this like grumpy, sexy plastic surgeon, and her friend asks her to take over for him for 6 weeks because he's going out of the country. She's like, yeah, I can't turn down this money, and you know, she gets to know this plastic surgeon, they fall in love, yada yada yada. The character development was pretty good. You would not expect that just if you're looking at the cover. And then the second book kind of has some similar characters. You get updates on Talia and the surgeon Hayes. The second book is about Drew. She's a pop star. She's in the first book briefly. And she goes to Hawaii to go on a vacation with her on again, off again boyfriend's family. And she gets there, and her boyfriend or ex or whatever you want to call him, he's not there. She stays on this vacation with his family waiting for him to arrive. And she has this hatred towards his brother Josh. They had one interaction in the past, and so they kind of hate each other. It's sort of enemies to lovers, but also not, because they don't really have a good reason to be enemies. Do they ever? Rarely, I guess. I don't know. I'm not good at tropes. Like, are these books enemies to lovers or Grumpy Sunshine? But anyway, so it's just her, like, you know, falling for the brother, and feel like you're on a journey throughout this book. But it was so good. I did not want it to end, and I'm so happy that there is a third one. I cannot wait to read it. I gave both of them 5 out of 5. Like, such a good series. Please do not judge it by the cover. It's way better than that. And the last book, I still have it here because I finished it most recently. This is Open Water. I think Jack Edwards probably recommended this one. It's not really something I can see anyone else I watch on BookTube reading. I mean, simply put, it is right person, wrong time. But it's so much more than that. It's really like poetry turned into prose, and I feel like I was reading so quickly this past month. And for a long time I've been in like a quantity over quality mindset. The day I finished a book, I would start a new one, and I got to this and I'm opening it and I'm like, yep, and nothing made sense to me. It was like the language was so flowery, nothing was sinking into my head, and I had to say, okay, Kayla, stop. Slow down, let's read the book again. It's really beautiful. So it's about 2 young Black artists, and they meet at a party, and they kind of like see each other across the room, and they instantly feel this magnetic pull to each other. But because of circumstances, they don't get together right away, and you're kind of seeing them become friends, but you know it's inevitable that they get together because they have such a pull to each other. And you know, while you're reading this love story, you're also getting hit with this this other like massive element in that the main character is like a young black man, and he is really struggling with the reality of that, of, you know, police brutality and being stereotyped and being targeted on the streets, and it's weighing so heavily on him that it's affecting his relationships with other people, like his family and this woman. And the pain he feels is so palpable, but then also the love he feels and the attraction he feels and the giddiness he feels is also so obvious. And it's truly so beautiful to read about young love, but then also you're hearing from someone's mouth, like, this is how it feels to be a black man, this is how challenging it is for me to even just like wake up and leave my home. And you don't get to hear that a lot. You only get to see glimpses on the news and on social media. And I think that it was so wonderful of this author to share that with us, and it was really beautiful. I have a clip of me reading it because I read this one scene that I really liked, so I'll insert that here just so you can get a glimpse of what the style is. You want to tell her that there are some things you won't heal from, and there is no shame in your hurt. You want to tell her that in trying to be honest here, you dug until shovel met bone, and you kept going. You want to tell her it hurt. You want to tell her that you have stopped trying to forget that feeling, that anger, that ugly, and instead have accepted it as part of you, along with your joy, your beauty, your light. Multiple truths do exist, and you do not have to be the sum of your traumas. You came here to the page to ask for forgiveness. You came here to tell her you're sorry that you wouldn't let her hold you in this open water. You came here to tell her how selfish it was to let yourself drown. You came here to tell the truth, that you're scared and heavy, that sometimes this weight is too heavy. The ache in your chest fills, bulbous and stretched, and though you wished it would, the ache will not burst. But yeah, that's it. 13 books in October. Let me know if you read any of them, if you disagree with any of my opinions or any of my ratings. This one, I forgot to say, was a 4 out of 5, or maybe 4.5 out of 5. I don't know. And then my camera died, but I was doing the outro anyway, so let me just say thank you guys for watching. If you have any suggestions for other reading videos you would like to see, I have one coming 2 days from now. Look at the date and figure out what that video might be. And thank you guys for watching and supporting me. I'm having the time of my life filming these reading videos. I mean, I'm still gonna do my workout content, but this is just so fun for me right now. So thank you for supporting me, and I hope I'll see you for the next one. Bye.